Alright, this is going to be a demonstration as to why we do brake pads and rotors. Take a look at this rotor. This rotor has been cut all up here, but in here it's not cut yet because it was worn low. It had some grooves. It's got quite a bit of defects on it. This side's getting a little bit better. Basically what that causes, because let's say this rotor is nice and smooth, this is going to be perfect for nice brand new flat brake pads. When your rotor is worn like that and it's kind of like maybe it's a little thicker out here and it's a little thinner in here and it's got a little bit of waviness to it, because the rotor's hard, the brake pads are going to conform to that. So if you go ahead and you put, you know, new brake pads on, like for example, this isn't new, but this is pretty close to new because we just made it flat. Your brake pad, let's go back to that old one. This brake pad would be conforming to this rotor and taking in all its defects. And now rather than being flat, it's going to be, you know, like probably a little more worn on the outside, a little less worn right here. It's going to have some marks and stuff in it. So we actually have one of those from the car with that rotor. This pad looks okay. And if you look at it like this, it looks okay. But if you actually sand it, you can see the real defects. So I'm going to take the pad. I got sandpaper. It's on a really flat piece of metal. Granite would be great, actually. Granite or marble, like a countertop, would be really great. But I don't know if you're going to get in trouble sanding in the kitchen. If I do this, you can actually see the shadows here. So this was a high spot. If you look, there you go. This right here is all low. This right here is high. So this brake pad is totally conformed to the defects of that rotor. So let me sand a little bit more. It'll probably even highlight a little better. Alright, so now you can still see we're getting pretty good up into here, but all this was low, which means the rotor was high. So if the rotor's high, it makes the pad low. If the rotor was low, it makes the pad high. And so that's kind of matching what we were cutting off of there. So let's just say, first off, the logical choice is you do new pads and new rotors. Cool, that's probably your best option. Let's say your second best option, if your rotor's thick enough, you turn the rotor on the lathe. That gives it a perfectly flat surface like one of these. And then, and this also puts, you know, we're going to put a little cross hatching, a little non-directional finish on this, and that's going to help a couple things. Like for this brake pad, let's say it was new, that's going to help this brake pad bed in doing the burnishing process. It's going to basically, it's just going to break the brake pad in just right, so it's going to have long life and low noise. But let's say you had a brake pulsation, like that's what's really wrong with this car. The main problem with that rotor is a brake pulsation. You should tell the customer do the resurface if it's thick enough and then do new pads. But if they really want to reuse their pads, you could do it. But what you have to do is this. You're gonna take that messed up brake pad and you're gonna sand it dead flat. Just like what we did with that one. That one actually needs a little bit more. You see that shadow right there? That's still a little bit of a low spot. So you can literally do what I did and then keep looking at it. And if you get to the point where like, okay, it's all the same. See this one, if I wipe this, you can see it even more. See that middle? The middle's still shiny because that's a low spot. You gotta get rid of all the low spots. If you don't, this is the problem. The high spots on the pad will touch the rotor. The low spots won't, so therefore all the center of this brake pad would not be touching the rotor. You'd get no friction and your stopping distance would be horrible. The customer would be complaining, you know, my car doesn't stop as well. And so, you know, if you want to be saving, resurface the rotor, assuming it's thick enough. It's not what this video is about. And then go ahead and sand the pads on a nice flat surface like this. And then wash everything, clean everything, and go do the burnishing process. Get it up to speed, do several moderate stops, and actually it'll be just fine. And P.S., the reason this happened was mainly because it was pad slapped. So over the course of the life of a set of brake pads, that rotor is probably going to get some defects. So like by the time you're ready for some new pads, you're probably ready to address some problems in that rotor. But This customer, it's a BMW, so it's typical. They just go ahead and, you know, do it cheap, make sure the car looks good, make sure it looks like really good, but go ahead and slap some pads on there. By the time you've worn a whole set of pads and another partial, that rotor's going to be pretty hurting. So we're bringing it back to life. So not only is it going to look good, potentially attract you a mate, it's also going to stop good now by the time we're done. So you guys can see, you can get an idea if there's some defects, but to really know, you're going to have to do some measurements and stuff. So that's how you can save them.